Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome to Everyday Asphalt. My name is Jim Warren. I'm with TechSAPA. Glad to have you guys here today. The purpose of this program is to go a little bit deeper in the areas of materials, design, construction, and maintenance. We post all these videos up on our YouTube site. They'll be posted the day after this program airs, which is again third Thursday of the month at 3 o'clock. And we also are posting a audio version of this on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. So please like, subscribe, and share with your friends, and you can listen to us as you're driving down the road now. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So today we have traveled almost, well, not today, but this week we've traveled almost 900 miles, and we are in Opelika, Alabama. Did I get that right?
Opelika.
Opelika. Okay.
My wife says you pronounce it as
I like it?
Hope you like it.
Hope you like it. Okay, yeah. Opelika, Alabama, just north of Auburn, and we have been attending the 8th Test Track Conference at NCAT, National Center for Asphalt Technology. Our guest today is Dr. Buzz Powell. Welcome, Buzz.
Great to be here, Jim.
I've known Buzz a long time now, and Buzz has just retired officially from NCAT, but he's still working there. I don't know. You got a separation problem.
I'm not very good at being retired.
And he's now the technical director for the Asphalt Pavement Alliance. So we got a lot to talk about today. And just to warn you guys, I think we're going to run long today because I've got 2 pages of questions to ask Buzz.
And I might have some really long answers.
Well, that's okay. I'm looking forward to it. So, Buzz, tell our audience a little bit about your career, how you got to this point, and just let's start there.
Well, you want to you maybe learn some things about me that maybe people don't know.
We don't want to. Don't get.
I started
TMI.
I started my professional life as I was an apprentice butcher.
Okay.
And the grocery store that I worked for sold out, and I became a computer programmer. I worked for the Alabama DOT, helped them to build their pavement management system.
Wow.
And I fell in love with the engineering side of the pavement management database.
Okay.
As opposed to the coding side.
Holy cow.
And then I got into I interned in geotech with Alabama DOT.
Okay.
Did a bunch of bridge construction. Almost got killed on a bridge job when a big piece of equipment fell. So I said, I need to do something where there's not all this stuff hanging over my head.
A little bit more horizontal?
Yeah, horizontal. So that's why I got into pavements. And so I was 12 years with Alabama DOT. Okay. Left as the assistant testing engineer. So I worked in a lot of different areas. Mm-hmm. Was in business for myself a few years, and then I became the first test track manager at the National Center for Asphalt Technology.
What year was that?
It was 1999.
99. Okay.
Yeah. So I was here a little over 24 years, and was very blessed to be able to do a lot of unique things and built hundreds of test sections using materials and mixes and methods from all over the country. Yeah. So that really, I think, was great preparation for my new job with the Asphalt Pavement Alliance, because I've got a lot of experience with a lot of different things because of the work that we've done here at the track.
Absolutely.
So I kind of look at it as, God had a plan, and I've got this really weird, diverse background, and it makes it
from butchering to asphalt.
That's right. It's a good fit, I think. So that's my story.
Just in case that asphalt thing don't work out, you can always go back and cut me.
That's right, exactly. And with the Asphalt Pavement Alliance, because I'm the technical director, I'm still working a few hours a week to make sure I hand off the test track work to the young bucks that are here. Have a good handoff, and I'm excited about that as well.
Amen. So, NCAT track. Mm-hmm. Okay. 99.
Yep.
For those that don't know, give us kind of a little bit of, just give us the nickel tour about what the track's about.
Okay.
Length, how many, we've had 8 cycles now. What's a cycle? That sort of stuff. Give us a little bit of background there.
So I guess first of all, they broke ground out here in September of '98. So there was about a year's worth of construction under
I remember almost getting stuck in the mud out here.
That's right. Shane Buchanan, who's a very dear friend of mine, and we went to graduate school together. Shane was kind of the steward for the project before I came here, and he did a great job. And so NCAT hired me in '99, and we built the the infrastructure and the buildings and the the parking lots and everything, and altogether we ran, I think it was 53,000 tons of mix to build everything out here.
Just for the infrastructure.
For the infrastructure, for the track foundation, and then for the first set of experimental mixes.
Okay.
It was a lot of tons,
Yeah.
and so the idea with it was Alabama DOT was a huge benefactor for us. They provided the startup capital for the track.
Yep.
And it was one of those field of dreams things. If we build it, they will come. And
it did.
So Alabama wanted to host the track. Of course, the National Center for Asphalt Technology being at Auburn was a big reason for that. And Ray Brown, the director at the time, and Don Brock flew around in the Aztec jet and met with DOTs all over the Southeast. And so it kind of the business plan came together where, based on that startup investment that Alabama made, that in these 3-year research cycles, state DOTs could fund research to directly meet their pressing research needs.
Yep.
And then they didn't have to do anything to recover the startup cost because Alabama provided that.
Right.
So
that really, really big partnership there.
Huge partnership. Yeah.
Yep.
Alabama made a large investment. It was a great opportunity for the states to come in and get a good deal on a relatively cost-effective deal on their research. So the idea behind it was to have these 3-year research business cycles where at the beginning we build test sections and at the end we do destructive forensics and tear them up and have things like
which is what you've done.
Which is what we've done, and have and host the track conference and promote implementation. And kind of in the middle of these 3-year cycles, using a fleet of heavy triple train trucks, apply a design lifetime of damage compressed into about 2 years. So for us, that's 10 million equivalent single axle loadings.
In 2 years.
In 2 years. And so we've done that with our budget kind of resetting to zero. And essentially it's a nonprofit business that reboots every 3 years. And that means that since you mentioned that we just hosted the 8th track conference, that means we've had 8 of these 3-year cycles. So we've done 80 million equivalent single axle loadings, which is over 11 million miles that have been driven on the track.
Wow, that's crazy.
And we've had a few, you can't drive that many miles without a few things going wrong, but we've never had a fatality or what I would call a serious injury out here. So we're very proud of our safety record as well.
You've hit a couple deer, I think.
We've hit a few.
Did you do your butchering skills?
No butchering of the deer. But now we stopped counting after I think it hit 200. So it was.
Oh my goodness!
In the first cycle, it was a bit of a mess, and then it was a big exercise in natural selection. So the deer that remained after
they're a little bit smarter.
They're a little smarter. They'll watch the trucks go past, and then they'll try to cross the road unless they're in a rut, and then they're not thinking clearly. And so sometimes when they're in a rut, things happen. But for the most part, it was carnage for 2 years, and then after that, it settled down significantly.
Natural selection. 1.7 miles, is that right?
1.7 miles.
It's an oval, and
9,
we're out in the middle of a forest out here. Essentially, that's what you guys did.
It is.
You came in and carved out of this forest this racetrack, essentially.
And so the university found this great piece of land, and they got far enough away from development so that we wouldn't have a lot of neighbors to disturb, but yet would be 30 kind of door to door, 30 minutes from campus,
that's great.
And 30 minutes from NCAT. It's kind of as a triangle,
which is awesome.
And so it worked. It turned out to be a great location, and it worked beautifully.
Got it. Right now we are at the track, and we are parked underneath the shed because we have gone through some pretty good rain today. It's raining right now, and so I'm trying to keep the rain off the roof, but we're going to take a drive here in a little bit. But before we do, just a couple more questions. What's the advantage of a full-size track versus an HVS or something like that?
Well, there certainly is a place for HVS for the other way.
Heavy vehicle simulator.
Yeah, this is a class of research that's called accelerated pavement testing, or APT is the abbreviation for it. And you can do APT, accelerated testing, 2 different ways. You can super load using load simulators, or you can legally load just a whole lot of legally loads and use full-scale truck. So you can use simulators or you can use trucks.
Right.
And the advantage of the simulators is it's faster and it's cheaper, but the disadvantage of the simulators is it's very slow speed, and you can only test so much at one time.
Right.
So where the simulators run maybe 10 miles per hour, our trucks run at a speed that gives us what we call a high-speed response event. So
which you want to know how
That's
that
right.
how that you load that pavement, you unload it, you reload it. You need to know how that cycle is.
So because we travel at relatively high, so for us that's 46.5 miles per hour, kind of on average. But a pavement load event becomes a constant after about 40 miles per hour. So so 46.5 is a really good speed. So there's no question about how the damage that we induce here relates to the interstate, because it's an interstate simulation.
Gotcha.
And then also the bigger deal is legal axles. Like we could do our work faster and cheaper if we superloaded, but then you wouldn't have any idea really how that relates to the interstate where we don't superload.
Right.
So we run a lot of axles, and they're all loaded up to but not beyond the federal legal bridge limit.
So you run how many days a week?
We run 5 days a week. We run an AM shift and a PM shift. So, 2 8-hour shifts.
So 16 hours a day, 5 days a week. You take Sundays off, and then Monday you go out, or you went out. That was the weekly testing, right?
That's right, and it's the blessing in it. One of the things I did with Alabama DOT was research, and for one phase of my career, and so when we implemented SuperPave, for example, we had SuperPave projects that were scattered all over the state, and one of the things I was tasked with doing was collecting all the QC data and monitoring performance. And you got climate differences between North Alabama and South Alabama, and I wasn't on site when the QC data was collected, so you don't know how valuable the data is,
right?
And you don't really know what the traffic levels are. So there's all these confounding factors. Plus, to do performance assessments back then, you had to get out in traffic to observe. A
little bit dangerous.
It's very dangerous.
Yeah.
So, like one of the biggest blessings out here that we don't often talk about is we close the track, the fleet parks, and so we can go out there and collect data in complete safety, 100% safety, and that's a huge benefit. And then regarding the other issues that I talked about, the confounding factors, it's identical climate. We know precisely what the traffic is. We build the test section, so we know exactly what the quality is going into the mix that's in the mat. And so all those things that used to drive me crazy when I was with the DOT, when we first implemented SuperPave,
you got a lot
precisely controlled here. So I've really enjoyed it, because it was neat that early in my career I was kind of on the front edge of SuperPave with the DOT.
Right.
And then here I have the opportunity to do a bunch of research
to make
it better,
So for a lot of people don't know that you guys have got a partnership up in Minnesota. So what's that like? Well,
when I first came to work here in '99, that was the first year they had the APT International Conference, is what they call it.
Okay.
So they hosted this big meeting at University of Nevada, Reno. That was the West Track, the rollout of the West Track project data.
Right.
That was just a month or two after I came to work here. So
okay.
It was awesome, because I got this crash course in what are people all over the world doing in the APT world, accelerated pavement testing.
Just a couple of those really out there.
No, there's the only track that's like ours the one that is the most like ours is actually in Beijing, China.
Okay.
And it's because they modeled it after what we did here.
Okay.
But so I went to that first conference, and of course I started relationships with other facility operators, and one of the most recognized was Minnesota Road Research Project, was the Minroad facility.
Yeah. Yep.
And so we developed just fast friendships with the Minroad team, beginning at that conference in 1999. And so we've been collaborating through the years, primarily through TRB, and just developing really strong friendships, really strong relationships. Well, beginning in 2015, we sort of formalized that collaboration through a contract partnership between NCAT and the Minnesota Road Research Project. And so the goal of that was, well, you know, we're have this great reputation sort of as the SEC test track, more, you know, plus or minus. You know, what about the extreme northern states? Well, Minroad was doing a lot of good research, and so we said, hey, let's combine our powers, you know. And so we then got into these series of cycles where we would build test sections down here, and then we would go up there the next year and build the same test sections up there. And we did research in mixing materials and then also in pavement preservation in cooperation with them. Yep. So where we look primarily at, you know, fatigue cracking down here, the main thing we're looking at up there is thermal cracking and reflective cracking.
Right. Awesome. Well, as we mentioned, we just finished the 8th cycle, the conference, test track conference, and that was fun on campus. And wow, I was like, dang, I was making notes. I've got 21 pages of notes.
It's like drinking from a fire hydrant.
It really is. And you know, I'm going to ask you what your one takeaway is from this cycle. But I was, you know, and listening to all that today, and I ran into a guy I haven't seen in years. He came up to me. He was actually in Florida for a while. He's out in California now. And he goes, the first time I ever met you was in 1991. You were here teaching mix design. And I worked for NAP, the National Asphalt Pavement Association at the time, and we would come to here and we'd go to Reno a week in each place, and we'd do a mix design course every year. Marshall mix design. And the thing that I got out of today was, you know, we preached 4% air voids, 4% air voids, and that's been the mantra for, you know, literally probably half a century.
Yep.
But what I'm seeing now is I'm seeing mixes that don't have 4% air voids. They got 3, they got 2.5, they got even one that was like, I think, under 2, and they're performing.
Yes.
And so I'm like going, I got to rethink some of my thoughts. And I think there's a lot of work, if anybody follows kind of the national stuff, there's a lot of work nationally about rethinking this whole thing about these design air voids. But that's the one thing I've got to go back and take another harder look at. But what was you? I know you're probably just inundated, but is there one thing from this cycle that just kind of stands out that you kind of go,
Well, that's a great question, and there are often things that surprise me out here.
Okay.
And I think
that's my next question.
Well, and they're sort of tied together, you know, because I was raised professionally on Marshall hammer designs, and then, you know, of course I was at AlDOT for the transition from Marshall mixes to Super Pave mixes, and we need to produce and place healthier mixes.
Okay.
And I think that one of the things that really stands out to me is it to summarize it, I guess, volumetric principles, kind of traditional volumetric principles.
Starting point?
They're really useful tools for optimizing a mix in a laboratory, for designing a mix.
Okay.
They're good tools for designing a mix, but I think they're inadequate for policing.
Controlling.
Controlling and policing and you know, for contract work, for producing and placing mix, they're inadequate.
For contract compliance. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, compliance.
That's a big shift.
It is a big shift, and so my friend Bill Piner and I have had a lot of discussions about this.
I just talked to him the other day.
And really, it's about healthy mix is about the quantity and the quality of the effective binder content. So effective binder content is really important, but the quality of the effective binder content, there's no indication of that in volumetric work.
Right.
So you can use volumetric principles to make mixes better, but for compliance on construction, it's not useful at all. And so a lot of the things.
Makes sense.
Yeah, a lot of the things
you can't mention Bill without mentioning aggregate shape.
Yeah. How much time did you say we had?
We did Bill back in January, so he's already been on the program.
Well,
so.
he's a very dear friend, and
he's a great guy.
We had a very long conversation about this, and so we agreed that it's about the quantity and the quality of effective binder content. That's what drives mix performance.
I like that.
And what jumps out in my mind, and you know this because you took notes on it, is is we use what we call thick lay paving out here, where we
I want to talk about that.
where we sort of violate some of the principles that we were raised with, and the mix that really started that is a 2.5 air voids design with neat asphalt and 25% wrap. It's a 12.5 in mass mix, and we placed it 8 inches thick, and got density.
That violates pretty much most of them.
We got density. We got density throughout the profile.
Yep.
But one of the big takeaways from that is that didn't rut at all, but it was a virgin mix with neat asphalt and 2.5% air voids in it, and it didn't rut. And I think, like you said, I mean, we've done mixes all the way down to 1% air voids, and I think sometimes we make the mistake of projecting some of our volumetric stuff that is sort of a carryover from when we had less restrictive aggregate stockpile requirements.
Right.
In Alabama, we had some dirty stockpiles that were included in the mix, and I think we're living in an era where compliance is just not possible with volumetric principles, but with the BMD test, the balanced mix design test that we have.
You start with good rock, start with good binder.
Yes.
Look at your performance, and we can start looking maybe at some things maybe in the past just kind of held kind of sacred.
Well, and I always talk about a four-legged stool. It's about good materials, good designs, good construction effort, and good inspection. With those four things, we can build some really good roads.
Okay.
And if you're not, I think the vast majority of contractors, if you're building a road for yourself, you would know exactly how to do it so that it would be a great investment and perform really well. Vast majority of contractors.
Okay.
Our challenge is, how do you create a competitive level playing field where you can bid jobs to build those pavements?
Using not necessarily having the same materials, the same resources, and the same location and everything else.
And you're bidding against, you're competing against other people for that work.
Absolutely.
And so your task is to satisfy all the specification requirements at the lowest possible cost. And so in this new era where we talk about balanced mix design tests, it's really, what does that level playing field look like to require the kind of quality that we want? Because if I'm a contractor and I'm bidding the job, I want to build it so that it's going to be really high quality. But if I can't get it competitively and somebody else gets it, because
you don't even get the chance.
I don't get the chance to do it.
You don't get the chance to start up.
So it's like we need to start with the level playing field, and then kind of work our way backwards.
But then I think, I think some of the stuff when we're talking about balanced mix design and we're hearing that, there's opportunity for innovation there. Right.
If we do it right.
If we do it right.
There's great opportunity for innovation, and you've probably heard me talk about this, but I've sort of lived this because I get mixed designs from states all over the country, and they here at the track, and they tell me, I want you to hit asphalt content, I want you to hit gradation, and I want you to hit volumetrics. So it's like those three things are a triangle. You can do any two of them, but you can't do all three of them. And so, and I've been compliant, with state specs all these years.
But
so
you're limiting.
You kind of got to hit the middle of the triangle, right?
So you're compromising maybe here, and here to get to the middle. But if you really would open it up, you'd have more. You could maybe make a better mix.
Well, and now if we say, okay, we still want you to do those three things, but now you got to meet this cracking requirement and this rutting requirement.
In addition to that,
you just turn that triangle into like a pyramid. and so how do you bid and build that and know that you're not going to be you're not going to be penalized when you can't hit everything? So it's really, really important that we relax our grip on the volume, I call it legacy volumetrics. We have to relax our view of legacy volumetrics.
Okay.
And if you do that as a contractor, then I can innovate. You give me space to innovate, and I will do that.
Gotcha. All right. And you've been here since the beginning. What one section over all the years surprised you the most? Because you mentioned surprise earlier. Sometimes things surprise you.
Well, the one I talk about probably the most is the thin lay over in section W6 from the 2003 track that's still there.
Is that the famous Tony Garrett?
That's
section?
The famous Tony Garrett section. It sure is. So that was a 3/4 inch thick, 4.75 in mass mix, 6.1 AC, 70% limestone screenings, 30% hard sand.
Okay.
And no one really thought that it was going to be a high performance mix. The idea was this is a great kind of county road type mix.
Right.
I was raised to look at that and say, with that much asphalt in it, and with no rock in it, it's only going to go so far, but we'll learn something from this. Well, here we are, 70 million equivalent single axle loadings, and 21 years later,
wow,
that section is still out there. It has just a few surface cracks in it, no rutting.
Amazing.
It's like it's armor plated, and so
wow,
like that just completely, that and in conjunction with some other test sections where we saw that smaller, finer mixes have better cracking resistance than the bigger rock heavy mixes. Those mixes
that's a shift. That's also
it's a huge shift,
kind of brain shift, because a big rock makes strong,
And I think that my theory is that, and I did my master's degree work with SMA mixes, with Marshall hammers and SMA mixes for the Alabama DOT, and I think that we thought, well, these SMAs are full of rocks, so with these new super pave mixes, we need a lot of rocks in them, so they'll be kind of like SMAs.
Right.
And the reality is we really don't need a lot of rocks. We can use smaller size materials because we've got higher quality aggregate requirements. A stable aggregate structure is a stable structure regardless of how big the particle sizes are. If it's stable,
and that's what
stable.
you found with your 8-inch lift with a 1/2 inch nominal maximum aggregate size. That violates all kinds of rules.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So that and then that W6 mix became the basis really of all the preservation thin lays that we have done since that time.
Okay.
Beginning in 2012. That is an outstanding
Amazing
mix, and so that sticks in my mind because it completely changed the way that I thought. And then another one that really stands out is the 5 3/4 inch thick, highly polymer modified section that we built in 2009.
And is that for Oklahoma?
That one was for Creighton, came in as a private sponsor, and they paid for that test section actually in partnership. Same price as all the state DOTs, so they made a big, huge investment in that. But when the track was originally built, the 93 AASHTO design guide said to survive, X numbers of research cycles, you need 24 inches of asphalt. You need 2 feet plus or minus of asphalt. And so, that based on empirical pavement design. What the viewers might not realize, that's all based on results from the AASHTO road test. The thickest asphalt pavement on the asphalt, how thick? Do you know the answer to that question? The thickness of the thickest asphalt pavement in the road test.
It's like 5 inches?
It was 6 inches.
6 inches.
So
and they only had 2 million easels on the whole.
Right.
So
we designed a 2 foot thick track foundation based on real data that exists for 6 inches or less of pavement thickness.
Okay.
And that's what's really wrong with designing industrial access roads. And heavy easel roadways is we've typically got too much thickness, and that's why we need to look at stress and strain based or the mechanistic empirical based thickness design procedures. So where the original track, the computer said you need several feet, what we found was that with innovative material, the highly polymer modified material, 5 3/4 inches was very likely perpetual. So look at the difference in thickness.
Oh, yeah.
Look at the difference in material. That's
cost,
what the same
materials, environment, sustainability.
That's right.
Everything.
So with very similar hot mix, gradation type designs, the same base and the same subgrade, you've got 5 3/4 that's perpetual. So the extra, 19 inches or whatever you don't need.
Wow.
And then we found in that same kind of cycle, 2009 or 2003, 2006, 2009, that 9 inches of pavement with our base and with our subgrade, and nothing in nothing innovative, just mixes.
Just good quality materials mix.
That's right.
With construction,
with top-down neat asphalt and top-down polymer asphalt. So even with neat asphalt, 9 inches is perpetual. So without doing anything exotic,
wow.
The difference between, that's 15 inches of wasted thickness. And it's because of the limiting strain theory. That's what perpetual pavements are. Dave Newcomb,
rest his soul.
God rest his soul.
Yep.
Everybody loved Dave.
Yep, absolutely.
Great human being. And an amazing engineer. He kind of coined I think he's credited with coining the perpetual pavement concept in the early 2000s. And the track has proved it over and over and over. So if you're someone who's skeptical of that, we've got 2 test sections on the track right now that have been out for 80 million easels, and they're the original really thick pavements, and they probably will never fail. I mean, they're there forever.
Wow.
And so we know perpetual pavements are real because we've seen numerous iterations of it out here, and going all the way down to as thin as 5 3/4 inches with innovative materials.
Wow, that's cool.
And I actually wrote a paper for the Perpetual Pavement Conference that's this fall on the large variety of perpetual pavements
neat.
that we have seen here at the NCAT Pavement Test Track.
That's awesome. All right, we are back. We're going to go take a little ride now and drive around the track, show you guys what's going on. Try not to get run over by a lumber truck.
Yeah.
All right, we're doing something different, Buzz. We're going to play word association.
All right.
Or my version of it, and I'm going to give you a word, and just tell me what your response to it relative to the track. Okay?
Okay.
All right. First one is pavement design.
Can I use as many words as I want? Is that what we're doing?
We gotta finish today.
Pavement designs need to be more efficient. We have a lot of in many jurisdictions, we have a lot of excess thickness that is that we need to invest.
Overly conservative.
Yeah, we're too conservative in many jurisdictions with our pavement thickness designs.
Interesting. Okay. We're just passing the Virginia section where they actually cut sections out, which is something you do, and you cut a lot of holes in it and do a lot of analysis to it.
Transverse trenching and longitudinal trenching, so that when we see distresses on the surface, we want to know what do they look like in the bottom of the pavement. And that's a fun section back there because it has a 100% wrap cold recycle base.
Right. So here's a Texas section. So since we are Texas, what happened here at N6?
So N6 is a test section that we built in 21. And it's a balanced mix design mix. So there are 2 sections on the south side of the track. On the other side of the track, one of them is a conventional mix, and the other one was a first
early
attempt.
Version.
It was an early version balanced mix.
And this is a later version.
It's a later version. And one of the things that we need to be cautious about with balanced mix design is, we think in most places we need a little more binder in the mix than what we have for them to be as healthy as they need to be. But we don't need to overshoot. It's a pendulum, and we don't need to swing the pendulum too far
and then have another problem.
That's right. So the 2 Texas sections on the other side of the track were kind of 2 extremes in changing the gradation. And so Texas wanted to do 2 things. They wanted to make the mix healthier, and they wanted to improve the macro texture of the mix as a safety initiative for surface mixes.
Right.
And so it swung course, away from the maximum density line on the other 2 sections over there that we had done in 2018. And so we saw significantly better performance with the balanced mix design mix.
Good.
But probably a little more deformation than what they really wanted to see. I wouldn't say it failed in rutting, but it had a little deformation in it.
But that's how you learn.
That's right. So this N6 mix is round 2 of it's the second iteration of balanced mix design, and I think it's a home run because there's no there's no deformation in it, and yet the cracking numbers that we're seeing are outstanding.
Good deal. Stabilized subgrade and/or stabilized base materials. What's your thought?
Well, that makes me think of test section S2 on the track, and that's the Mississippi test section. And of course, Mississippi has to deal with a lot of clay that's kind of in the Mississippi
do
Delta.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
like East Texas,
Yep.
same
Yep.
kind of situation.
Yep.
And so they do a lot of lime modification of their subgrade, and then they do cement stabilization with what they call their dirty bases. You know, kind of sand aggregate bases.
Right.
And so we've done a test section for them here where what they want to know is Mississippi is one of those states that wants to go to mechanistic empirical pavement thickness design,
Right.
but they have to understand how to account for the lime modification and the cement stabilization. So we have an instrumented test section here for them that we built in 2018, and we are still collecting data, monitoring that test section as we go forward.
Gotcha.
And it is really interesting because what we're seeing is that, and for the benefit of your viewers, that you saw a lot of our presentations this week at the track conference, but we like to design hot mix thickness based on strains at the bottom, and we say it's perpetual when the strains are low enough that a crack will never initiate.
Right.
Well, when you do stabilization, what our research is telling us is that the maximum strains shift up into the interior of the pavement thickness.
Okay.
So it's not at the bottom; it's somewhere in the middle.
Oh. Okay.
And that's important for where do you target strain tolerant mixes, and then also bond strength, tack between layers.
Gotcha.
When you have higher strains in the middle of the structure, and that's one of the things that we have discovered with pavements that are built with stabilized layers.
And that's my next one is tack.
Tack
You guys learned a lot.
We've learned a lot about tack, and let me just say, I completely understand how complicated tack is, because especially with high traffic roadways, we're often paving them at night. We got high humidity at night, especially in states like Texas and Alabama. And we've got to get in and out. We have to get off the road, by certain hours, typically in the morning. And so, what we have found is that if you more tack sometimes is needed. We found tack is super important.
Right.
Well, that's tough to do when you I know how hard that is, and I know how difficult that is, but we have learned out here that in real world paving, sometimes the spec, a textbook perfect tack, with air quotes, tack coat is not enough, and you need more. So we had a big failure out here back in 2013, and it was because a very structurally solid pavement debonded between the base layer and the intermediate layer. And when pavements debond, you have thicker pavements that now are responding like thinner pavements. And
you have very high strains.
So the high strains shift up into the middle, and you get middle up cracks, and then you have middle down cracks or bottom up cracks.
Oh, they're cracking both ways.
So it cracks in both directions.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But the biggest, the most obvious thing, what you're going to see on the surface, is the middle up cracking. So you can see what looks like kind of transverse bottom up fatigue cracking that might actually be from the middle of the pavement structure.
Wow.
And so that's what can happen to you when tack fails.
Yep.
But now one of the other things that we learned is that we're doing a study for North Carolina, which was discussed today at the track conference, and so we're using two different tack products, and then so we got a hot liquid tack that's just a
we call that a hot applied.
Hot applied tack.
Yep.
And then we're comparing it to and it's kind of a commodity hot applied. It's just what was in the storage tank at the plant.
Okay.
So it was a 6722.
Okay.
For Alabama.
Just a regular binder that you use in mix.
Exactly the same. And we're comparing that to a commodity emulsion. So I think it's a CRS 1H was the emulsion that we shot.
Yeah.
And so we shot equal bar rates and equal residual rates. So we shot the hot liquid at a 0.06, and we shot the emulsion at a 0.1 and a 0.06
to get the residual down to 0.6 and 0.3
to make them equal bar and equal residual.
Gotcha.
What we found was that we used a mix that I think is 20% wrap and 4% post-consumer shingle, so a lot of recycled binder in it.
A little stiff.
Yeah, pretty stiff mix, a relatively stiff mix. And what we found was that I don't think there's any statistical difference in the bond strengths. So
okay.
One of the takeaways from
I mean, I was looking at the numbers. I was like, they look about the same.
They're statistically exactly the same, I would say. And so one of the takeaways from that is when the milling is really good and there's no scabbing and you clean it up perfectly.
Scabbing, we talk about that.
And you shoot perfectly calibrated tack rates with the perfect triple overlap and everything, you're going to get good bond strengths. So when you need more tack is when sort of the imperfections of the real world bleed into the process, and you have a little scabbing, and you can't clean it up all the way, and then maybe you have a rain go through and you broom it and there's a little bit of moisture in there.
Got it.
So you throw in all the real world stuff, and we think we need a little more tack than our specifications typically require, just because of all the imperfections that are out there.
Okay.
Imperfect conditions.
Like a safety factor.
That's it. Yes, that's how I would describe it.
Got it.
I think that's what the body of research is telling us.
Okay. Well, I mean, Texas switched over to by the gallon a number of years, not too many years ago, for that issue. So they need a little bit more. They can put a little bit more down. So
that's right.
You call it highly polymerized binder. I'm gonna call it high binder or high HPG, but it's got lots of different names. What's your thoughts?
I think that
You've already mentioned it a couple times.
I have, and it can be a great product. You don't want to use it everywhere. Yeah. It's just like anything else. It's a premium product. You pay a lot for it.
Right.
So you don't need to use it on the whole network. But in a very targeted way, there are some great applications for it. For example, if you need a job, if you got to build a job fast and you want to do it with less layers, you get a higher structural contribution from mix that you make with the type of high polymer binder that we have used here, at least everything that we've got experience with. So if you need to take layers out and expedite construction, it's a great choice. If you've got a good example is remember when the tornadoes came through Tuscaloosa and did all the damage here in Alabama? Yep. So the interstates outside of Tuscaloosa, we had to clean a massive amount of debris out of the city of Tuscaloosa as quickly as possible. And so as much trash as you could put on a truck, that's what happened.
Overloaded.
Because we had to clean it up, because it was such a mess. And so we had interstates that were already in distress that just were in complete structural failure. And so this was after we had successful experiences here at the track. And so the problem statement was, how can we get the performance of more thickness without more thickness, because we got all these relief bridges.
You don't want to change elevations.
We can't, we can't afford to change elevations.
Yeah, I know that's one of Florida's, that's one of their things that they use there. Yeah. If I need to beef up the roadway, but I can't go change the bridges, and I can't change
exactly right.
everything else in there, so that's an option.
Alabama did that years ago after those tornadoes came through and got a really good rebuild out of it. We had another example where we had a really high truck traffic, very slow speed road that it failed a couple of times with SMA mixes on it in South Alabama. Okay. And so we used high polymer binder to prevent rutting with dense graded mix. So you can use it for more structural contribution, and you can also use it for better mix performance.
Gotcha.
So there's another case out here that you're familiar with that your viewers might not be, where we had a pavement on a soft clay subgrade.
You got this one?
That was this one.
What was this one?
It was in section N8 that we're looking at
Oklahoma,
right now. Yeah. And so it was in full depth structural failure. And so it was Nam Tran's idea. I always give Nam credit for it, because he said, Buzz, 5 3/4 inches is perpetual on an ag base and subgrade. Can we float a perpetual pavement on top of that failed
on a weaker
structure?
Okay.
And so where we had 10 inches of asphalt on soft clay subgrade with full depth cracking, we milled it out 5 3/4 inches, and we did a high polymer inlay, and it as long as it was in, it didn't have any distresses. I think it actually was a perpetual repair. So we salvaged a failed pavement and turned it into a perpetual pavement. So there's really targeted value in high polymer binder. You just don't want to waste money on it and spend it everywhere.
That makes sense. That makes sense. How should the industry? I mean,
there may also be a place for it with OGFCs, by the way.
Yep.
Enhancing we need better life out of OGFCs.
Yep. Yep.
There may be a place for it there.
Oh, I think there is. A lot of discussion this week on different types of additives, right? And I think in general, the contracting industry is like, oh, one more thing.
Right.
It looks like there's some benefits there. How should if you're a contractor, how should the industry look at this wave of modifiers, additives coming down the pipe? How should we view that? Is that a threat or is that an opportunity?
I think many of the things that we view as threats are really opportunities.
Okay.
Like if I really quickly put on a contractor's hat because of the way I've lived out here.
Sure.
and seriously,
yeah.
I can put on a DOT hat quick, but I can also take it off and put on a contractor's hat. I would want to use it to my competitive. I would want to understand it, so that I could use it to my competitive advantage.
Okay.
So I don't, the risky stuff. Just to be honest with you, like if I'm a contractor, anything that comes in pre-blended with my binder, that's going to gum up my tanks and gum up my plumbing and be a maintenance risk for me. Risk always shows up as higher prices, right? So if an agency tells me we want you to use this pre-blended whatever, I'm going to see that as risk, and I'm going to have to protect myself in case I do have to clean out all my stuff.
Okay.
I love the dry additives. I mean, and I would if I was a contractor. You just tell me what you want in it, and I'll be happy to put it in it, because none of that stuff is in my tanks.
Okay. All right. That's a good point.
And then I've seen enough of it to know that like we've not had to do anything special with rolling patterns or anything with any of the additives that we've used, even the stiffer stuff like the dry plastic. We've gotten density on everything, as you saw this week, and we've not had to do
pretty consistent density. I mean, across the board.
That's right. The one caveat I would put in there is a little bit of it would give me caution, and it just means you got to communicate with your agency. Is the rubber additives. My experience has been, and you heard the exchange during the meeting about this, that every one of the rubber additives that we've used, the wet stuff and the dry stuff, we've had to be careful about cooling gyratory specimens down before we jack them out. And that's because your rubber particles are, for your viewers' benefit, are essentially elastic black sand, right? So you mash this pill and you store elastic energy, and then you extrude it. And if there's not enough cohesion in the binder, it just fluffs, it expands. I
remember that in Florida used to use a lot of ground tire rubber wet process.
That's right.
And they had the same problem. We had to had to be standard. It was like, okay, let it sit in the mold, put the fan on it, let it cool off, and then everything was okay. But if you tried to jack it too early, you ended up having an issue.
You heard the exchange during the conference. I don't think it's swelling. I think it's expanding. It's like a spring. It's releasing energy from those compressed rubber particles. Reason why I mention that is because number one, your QC team knows there's something different they got to do in the lab, and number two, the agency inspection team needs to know there's something different that needs to be done in the lab.
Right.
And you're not trying to game the system when you do that different thing. It's the technically correct thing to do. Right. Because if you don't take a precaution there, a 4% air void mix can turn into a 7% air void mix, and you might get busted, with your agency if they don't understand that you've got to do that in order to get accurate volumetric measurement.
That makes sense.
So that's a risk that if you can't get an assurance from the agency that they're going to let you use a modified practice to account for that, then you need to protect yourself as a contractor. But the vast majority of this stuff, it feeds with the high tech feed systems, and you just blow it in the wrap collar, and life is good.
There you go.
Nothing special.
Let's see. In place density or air voids, depending on how you calculate it, relative to performance.
There's a distinct relationship, in my opinion. There's a lot of published. Really high level.
One right here. I think this was the Florida section.
Me, and what I love is the practical stuff that I've had my hands on, where I can say
because they changed densities.
Yes.
and
Yes.
they're looking at performance.
And there's a lot of really high-level research out there that says when we get better density, we get better performance. But I really sell out on it when I've experienced it and I've had my hands on it and I know exactly how it was done. You know what I mean?
Sure, absolutely.
So these two test sections on the track, they're Florida test sections. 4 subsections. It's identical plant mix, and the goal of the research was to hit 88, 90, 92, and 94% density.
Okay.
And so we did that.
I'm going to change that there. There we go. Fix our aperture. There we go.
We did that by modifying our rolling, compaction effort, and kind of taking advantage of cooling in the mat. And as you saw this week, there are telltale signs that yes, there's a distinct effect on the longevity of the mix as a result of that lower density. And in my opinion, we talked about kind of absolute texture numbers and absolute raveling differences. If you look at the rate of raveling in those mixes, it's even more pronounced.
So you're physically seeing.
Yes,
and
you see it in the rheology of the binder. So, like, it doesn't look to me like there's a huge difference between 92 and 94% density. So you could use those differences to justify adjustment in pay between 92 and 94 if you wanted to take that approach. But the 90 and the 88 are distinctly different than the two higher. So
that makes sense.
If you're looking for, where do I need to require removal and replacement based on what we've seen here, it's with dense graded mix, it's probably 90%. And this is
10% air voids.
10% air voids, and that's with 20% wrap, so it's pretty representative of what surface mixes that people are placing.
Okay.
Can I back up?
You may.
So you asked me about the additives.
Yeah.
I would, if I'm a contractor, to finish my answer, because I got off track just a little bit thinking about the pills in the QC lab. I want to understand the impact that the additives are going to have on pavement life, so that I can choose products off of a QPL if it's going to make my mix better.
Okay.
But also, if you God forbid, get hit with some kind of an environmental mandate on using products, you need to know how they're going to behave, what they're going to do, what your risks are as a producer.
You're ahead of the curve.
So I would experiment with this stuff on parking lots or whatever, and where I could get permission to do it so that I could learn it.
Okay.
And my advice to people is don't be afraid of it. Just understand it, so that you can use it to your competitive advantage.
Balanced mix design.
Yes.
I mean, we've already talked about it.
Balanced mix design.
Yeah.
I think balanced mix design done properly is the way that we get healthier mixes, is the way that we bid and build healthier mixes. But in order to do it, I don't think it's a good idea to turn that triangle into a pyramid. I think we need to relax our volume significantly.
Add something, you got to relax something.
We need to, significantly relax our volumetric requirements. And by relax, and this is kind of the Buzz Powell idea, not endorsed by anybody, but this is what I would like to see us do. I would like us to not even do in-design specimens to monitor construction, but make BMD specimens that we can test quickly. Like if I'm a contractor,
I liken that.
I got to know within a few hours if I'm okay. Finding out next week don't help me.
Nope.
So I'm an advocate of the rapid testing, ideal CT and ideal RT or hot IDT. 3.5 hours, I got data and I know where I stand.
That I think is that is where maybe the game changer comes.
Well, and here's my idea that I think is innovative. Instead of doing BMD specimens at 7% air voids and in design to check volumetrics,
go right then.
Let's take material right out of the back of the truck, stick it in the gyratory compactor, make those pills, and monitor the gyrations to get to 7% air voids. Because if the voids are collapsed in an inappropriate way, it'll just take a handful of gyrations to get there.
Right.
But if it takes you, say, 10 or 15 gyrations to get there plus, mix is probably good.
Okay.
And this is, my wife, and she and I have talked about this a lot because she's a mix designer and a QC technician. And I think that number is probably like something like a 15, possibly a 10 on the low end, and then on the high end, if it's a 35 to 40 or less. So you got a range in there where the volumetrics are probably good, and if the gyrations to get to 7% air voids for BMD specimens falls outside that range, then that's a red flag. And then do in-design pills to check and see where you are, and if you're at least 1% air voids, like I'm an advocate of rethink all of that and drop the requirement. If it passes a rutting test and passes a cracking test, as long as it's 1% or more, based on our experience here, then I'd call it good.
Okay, cool.
And that's kind of my dream for the future. And to go with that, here's the other thing, because it takes 3.5 hours plus or minus to get data, you can't randomize BMD tests. You have to gap them throughout the day. So like if you pull from truck 3, you've got 3.5 hours, you're going to pull another set, 3.5 hours, you're going to pull another set. So you've got, and I'm thinking as an agency, what happens during production in between when you pull those samples?
Right.
And kind of my dream is, what if we set our plants up so that the plant computer pushes through to the Weighmaster computer, and when you print me a ticket or you issue an e-ticket, it has on the ticket, here's your percentage for this load approximately as it flows through the silo in the system, here's your percentage of virgin, here's your percentage of wrap, here's your percentage of RAS if it's allowed, here's your percentage of virgin binder, and then here's your percentage of whatever additives are required. That way I can look at the mix proportioning in between my non-random.
Gotcha. I got a lumber truck up here I got to get around here.
Okay. In between my non-random samples.
Interesting.
And I can see that nothing changed at the plant, so I can have the expectation that mix quality is going to be the same.
Got it. Well, they are.
I don't know what you think about that, but
I honestly hadn't thought about it from that perspective.
But it doesn't say what's in the virgin percentage. That's a proprietary thing.
Right.
You don't want to get into someone's proprietary information.
And that can get kind of wonky. Talked a lot about performance testing this week. Hamburg came up a bunch. Ideal CT came up a bunch. There's some other tests that came up a bunch. It seems like there's a lot of, I'm going to stop here just for a second because I get tired of driving in circles.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, seems like there's some confidence in those now, where maybe last cycle there wasn't.
Yes, I would say so. We use the 2015 and the 2018 tracks to validate the laboratory tests, and we did this big experiment. You've heard of it, called the Cracking Group.
Yep.
And we correlated lab results to surface mix cracking performance. So we built these mixes on thin buildup so they would deflect a lot, but with highly polymer modified binder, so there was no cracking beneath the surface layers. And then we had a big range of cracking performance, and so we ran a whole battery of lab tests. We validated these cracking tests. Rutting tests, we've had confidence in the loaded wheel testers for 20 years.
Right.
But on the cracking side, that's been the big challenge, and so we do have confidence in these cracking tests. And on the rutting side, like I said, we've had confidence in the loaded wheel testers. The problem with them is the turnaround time from the time you fabricate a sample to the time you get data, performance data, which is why it's so awesome that the hot IDT tests, like hot IDT or ideal RT, they correlate really well to non-stripping performance in a loaded wheel tester.
Gotcha.
So you still need to do TSRs. You still need to do your
some
separate
sort
stripping
of evaluation
assessment.
of stripping. Okay.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
But for rapid testing, we feel good about how those tests correlate.
Good deal. Oh man, we are burning up some time here.
You talk too much.
I know. No, you're good. Let's see. Let me figure out where to kind of roll this thing.
A good place to stop might be section N3 over here, because that kind of has a good future principle.
Constructability. What have you learned relative to constructability out here? I mean, obviously thick lift is, y'all figured that out, and that gets a lot of people kind of in a bunch.
Thick lift has been a big deal because you know, people think, well, you're going to get density up top, but you won't get density down below. But if you think about it, it makes perfect sense. The base is pushing up while the rollers are pushing down. And we use this term this week. It's a density sandwich.
Right.
So since it's being pushed from the top and the bottom, the best density is in the middle third. But you have the density in the bottom is almost a mirror image of the density in the top because it's pushing together. So
and having confinement.
And it's confined. Yep. And so I mean, you just have to make sure that you know, it helps to have confinement. So
right.
if you're you know, the whole concept for the thick lay was if you need to quickly rebuild a failed interstate truck lane, how can you do it a quarter of a mile at a time
right.
without a big drop off?
Right.
Opening to traffic the next morning, and we proved that is very viable, especially if you're milling in a hole. I mean, and you've got that good confinement.
I think there's a great potential there for that. You guys call it rapid reconstruction. I agree 100%.
But now I'll say this though, if you got a lot of contractors that are watching your show, there's a lot of contractors out there that have done thick lay paving for a long time on private jobs. When they need a whole lot of asphalt for leveling or for whatever, they know that this works. The problem is, as agencies, like I would have not thought that it would have worked when I was writing and enforcing specifications for the DOT.
Okay.
So there's a lot of stuff that it sounds really odd, but
we're learning a lot.
You've probably got a lot of listeners that have tried some of this stuff.
Yeah, we're learning a lot.
Yeah,
we're learning a lot.
That's right.
All right. Trying to wrap up here.
So we're looking at section N3. I'll talk about that.
Okay.
So this is a great kind of proof of concept here, where it's sponsored by Cargill. They came in here and bought this test section in full partnership with the DOT, same price, and it compares a 30% wrap VDOT approved job mix to a 45% wrap version of that same mix that has a recycling agent in it. Okay. And so both of them are balanced mix designs, meeting their 70 ideal CT requirement that was what they were using at the time. They might still be using that.
Gotcha.
And so you can see just a very slight amount of deformation in the wheel pass in these two. They're identical surface, you know, texture performance, cracking performance, very small amount of cracking that's very difficult to see, just a little bit of deformation, and those mixes are identical in every way, but look at the extra amount of wrap that we put in the one that has the recycling agent in it, and we use balanced mix design principles
to show that
put
works.
that together. That's right.
Cool. Awesome.
So this is, as a proof of concept, you know, we need to make sure that these recycling agents, you know, the reason why Cargill has done traffic continuation on this section is because they wanted to prove, hey, it's easy to soften binder, but we want to prove that we're still there after 4 or 5 years and still enhancing the rheology of the binder.
It doesn't disappear.
It doesn't just evaporate out. Okay. So we have to make sure that and there's
we're not building pavements for 4 to 5 years. We're building them for 10, 15, 20,
and
30,
4 to 5
40.
years is kind of a magic point in the cracking performance of a surface mix.
Okay.
So there are a lot of products out there that are still there in the future, and we know that. And so that's why we use critical aging to look at the long-term cracking performance of surface mixes.
You do that critical aging, you definitely see some changes.
You see some big changes.
Big changes, absolutely.
Yeah, like it's easy to soften. Like you can put biodiesel in. I would never advocate that, listeners, but you know, biodiesel is a softener, you know, and it would possibly improve short-term cracking performance, but it's not going to be there
because it's gonna.
That's right. So we need environmentally sound products, that, you know, that are still there out in the future when we need cracking performance to be good.
Cool. Awesome. God, I very of like run time, so I'm going to finish here. A couple more questions. What's one thing that we should focus more on today that will increase our pavement performance without changing anything else?
That's a great question. I think shifting our focus off of kind of blind legacy volumetrics to the quantity and the quality of the effective binder content.
Okay, all right.
That I think is
a big shift.
And I think when you do that, you open the door to innovation.
Mm-hmm.
And innovation then addresses cost, it addresses EPDs and all the other stuff that's happening.
Right.
Recyclability, sustainability.
Right.
But we have to loosen our grip on volumetrics in order to do that.
All right, that works. Couple questions left. What was the hardest part of your old job? And I'm going to start running so we can get back to the ranch here. What was the hardest part of your old job?
The test track job?
Yeah.
Well, and I might have told you this before, but the hardest part of it was, you know, when I was with the DOT and then I was in private practice for a few years, I thought I knew what I was doing.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden I come here and I'm getting aggregates from all over the country and I'm doing mixes I've never seen before, and I realized I have no idea what I'm doing.
Wow.
And
okay.
I had basic concepts, but I learned.
You had deliverables.
I learned
you
more.
You had to make it work.
Oh yeah. When I came here, when I was with the DOT, I would tell a contractor, okay, contractor, you've got a problem. Now you need to fix it. And then when I was in private practice, I would tell a contractor, well, you've got a problem and here's some things you can try to fix it.
Right.
And then this was the first time I was ever in a position where everybody looked at me
I've got a problem and I've got to fix it.
Yeah, said, okay, Buzz, how are you going to fix this? And so I tell everybody, I learn more. My whole career has been just amazing blessing.
It's been a fascinating career, yeah.
But the 3 months building the first track, I learned more in those 3 months about mixes, about construction, about myself.
Got it.
Than I did the whole rest of my career.
Got it. What are you looking forward to with the new job?
Well,
you're still trying to figure it out because it's a new position.
No, I know exactly.
Yeah.
I know what I'm excited about my new job.
Okay.
I tell people that as the technical director at the Asphalt Pavement Alliance, my job is not to convince people that asphalt is better. My job is to make asphalt better. My job is to improve the performance of asphalt pavements.
Okay.
So
that'll work.
I'm super excited about that because that's been kind of my mission here for over 24 years is what can we do to make asphalt better? Yep. And so now I get to.
Now it's application.
And you know, the last 3 years I was in NCAT, the majority of my job was implementation support, right?
Yeah, you were going around.
And so I'm doing the same thing with Asphalt Pavement Alliance. And
so it's a natural evolution.
It's just a natural evolution, yeah. And I think that the value, like what I bring to the table for the APA, is the crazy diverse experience that I've had out here with a bunch of different things.
Yeah, there's probably not too many people who work with so many different materials as you have.
Yeah, praise God for that, man.
I'm
grateful to have had the opportunity. It's been a blessing to be here, and
good deal.
And I'm still sort of part-time part of the team here.
That's awesome.
So I'm excited about that as well.
All right, so I've been asking everybody this year, what's quality to you? Define what's Buzz's definition of quality?
Quality to me is good long-term performance.
Okay.
Like long life.
Okay.
And when you think of the kind of the evolving world where we're not changing our focus, but we're broadening our focus from just economics to economics and environmental to different degrees and in different jurisdictions.
Yep.
It's really all about longer lasting pavements.
Okay.
You know, we need, and I'll tell you this too. Here in East Alabama, we had 2 fatalities, two road crew fatalities with 2 different contractors. My philosophy is, you know, we need interstates to last longer. We need OGFCs to last longer.
Here, right?
Yes, you can navigate.
Okay.
Well, be careful because there might be a trench.
Okay.
I don't remember if we've got forensics there or not. But we need roads to last longer because that makes asphalt a more attractive choice as a pavement type selection. But also because it keeps our crews out of traffic for longer periods of time.
Absolutely.
And I think that's super important.
Okay. All right, last question, Buzz. Gonna make you king for the day. You get to change anything. What is it?
Great question. Of course, you know my heart, Jim. The personal answer to that question, you know what that answer is. It's a Jesus answer, right?
Absolutely.
But the technical answer to that question, and it's already been my answer to several other questions, I would say, okay, everybody, we're going to change the way we look at mix compliance.
Okay.
We're going to change our focus from legacy volumetrics, and we're going to focus on what really matters, which is cracking and rutting performance.
Okay. That'll work. That'll work. Awesome. A pleasure.
Love you, man.
You exceeded my expectations.
I love
as
you.
You normally do.
And I love our industry. Our industry is awesome.
Good folks out there. Good folks
Yes.
out there. All right. Well, I told you we were going to run long.
Yeah.
But I think I enjoyed the heck out of it. There's a lot of stuff that we talked about. Go back and listen to this again. Just a reminder that these are posted up on our YouTube website, and they will also be converted into audible versions, and you can listen to us on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. So that's all for today. We will see you next time. Thanks so much again, Buzz, and really enjoyed.
Thanks for having me, Jim.
Great. If you ever get a chance in the future, come to the next Test Track conference in 3 years. You will learn a bunch. So
That's right.
Take care, everybody. Be safe out there and ever forward.
Y'all have a blessed day.